The 2015 St. Louis Rams have a very unique effect on this year's NFC Championship. As a team, they were below average, finishing that season 7-9. And although they did have the defense to keep them in games, their Achilles heel was their offense. They were one of the worst offenses in the NFL, and they didn't have a full-time starting quarterback. The Rams dealt with two journeymen, Nick Foles and Case Keenum. Two guys with two very unique stories. The Rams eventually let them go, and now they are facing off in the NFC Championship. So there's only 3 football games left. If you're a fan of any of these teams or just a football fan in general, SeatGeek is an app that will help set you up for one of these games. It puts tickets from all over the web in one area, making buying simple. They rate the deals on a scale of 1 to 100, so you know you're getting a good deal. And if it's your first time, I can help you get $20 off your first purchase. Just use my promo code KTO at checkout. Shout out to SeatGeek for sponsoring this video and helping my family go see a game last weekend. So I'm going to tell you guys 2 separate stories. Let's start with Nick Foles. The Eagles have reached the playoffs for the first time since 2013, which you can give a lot of credit to their young quarterback and MVP candidate, Carson Wentz. But since he tore his ACL, the fate of Philadelphia now rests in the hands of Nick Foles. And it just so happens that the last time they made the playoffs in 2013, their starting quarterback was Nick Foles. Yet, between those 2 runs, he hasn't even been on the roster. So let's go back to 2013. The Eagles were a few years removed from their last playoff run, led by Michael Vick's incredible comeback season. But after that spectacular year, the man would struggle to stay healthy. 2013 pretty much marked the end of an era. He did start the first 5 games, but a serious hamstring injury kept Vick on the sidelines. The season was already going downhill at that point anyway, and the Eagles had no other choice. It was time to plug in the second-year backup, Nick Foles.
For me, Michael Vick should be the starter. I think Chip Kelly has dropped the ball on that. I think Michael Vick should be the starter, and it should be his job to lose. Michael Vick seems to be the perfect individual on his roster to run his offense.
The man may have been the furthest thing from Michael Vick that you could ever get. Vick is 6 feet even. Foles is about 6'6". Vick runs almost a full second faster in the 40-yard dash, and on top of that, Foles barely had any experience. Then, what would happen next shocked everybody.
Foles for Riley Cooper. End zone touchdown. Foles looking in the end zone. Throws there. Touchdown Eagles. Foles has it. Throws end zone. Touchdown Riley Cooper. That's 7 for Nick Foles. 7 touchdown passes today. And that equals an NFL record.
What do you expect out of Nick Foles today?
Probably more of the same thing.
16 touchdowns, 0 picks. The team's winning. They're atop the NFC East.
I think the kid's going to be a phenomenal player for a long time.
After going 8-2 as a starter, Nick Foles finished the season with some of the most jaw-dropping numbers ever. 27 touchdowns and only 2 interceptions. Somehow, some way, he did it. Nick Foles had rallied his teammates and led the Eagles to the playoffs. Matched up against Drew Brees and the Saints in the wild card, Foles played well, but the Saints clutched it. Say what you want about the season, no one expected that from Nick Foles. People say it had to be a fluke. There was just no way he was that good, right? Well, here's what happened. The following season, the Eagles, mostly with Foles at quarterback, started 9-3. Foles definitely dropped off statistically, but they were still winning games. But he did end up getting injured in week 9, and following that, the Eagles suffered one of the worst end of season collapses ever. Somehow, after starting 9-3, they missed the playoffs. And following that 2014 season, the Eagles wanted to revamp this offense. Since Nick Foles did fall off a bit the last season and didn't show much promise for the future, they traded him to the Rams for Sam Bradford. So that brings us to 2015, and now we transition into the second member of this story. Imagine setting the all-time record for passing yards and touchdowns for all of Division I college football. Nah, scratch that. How about setting 9 NCAA career records, most of which seem unbeatable, but then no one wants to draft you? Case Keenum had a very long and storied college football career, with some of the most unreal stats that you'll ever see. But due to his size and the offense that he played in during college, he would go undrafted. The Texans would later pick him up in 2012. For the next year, he would spend time on the practice squad and sometimes even as the third string quarterback. But going into his second season, Keenum was going to get his shot. Due to some injuries at quarterback, and just with the Texans playing so bad that they had no shot of making the playoffs, they decided why not, and they put Keenum in. Keenum played decent, but as a starter, he went 0-8. Ultimately getting waived after the season, he would end up signing with the St. Louis Rams, but never played for the Rams that season, eventually finding the role of the practice squad quarterback for the Rams for most of the 2014 season. But once again, the Texans desperately needed a guy because of quarterback injuries, so they ended up signing him off the Rams practice squad late in the 2014 season. He played in 2 games, which he ended up playing pretty well. This surely wasn't enough to keep the starting job, but it was enough to give him some trade value. So the Rams, who had this man on their practice squad, now traded a 7th round pick to get him back. That's not a huge deal, but still. So the quarterback depth chart going into 2015 for the Rams had Nick Foles as the starter and Case Keenum as the backup. I'm not sure if this season is forgettable for Rams fans or memorable. It was their final season in St. Louis, but the team didn't play all that great. Foles would end up being benched for Keenum, and then Keenum didn't do that much either, ultimately leading to the Rams trading up in the draft and selecting Jared Goff. After this, Nick Foles wanted to leave, which he did, and Case Keenum was going to serve as the placeholder during the 2016 season. They would end up benching Keenum in favor of Goff, so following the season, he left as well. So that's where we arrived at 2017. After Keenum signed with the Vikings, him and Foles both came into the season like they did most of their years in the NFL, as backups. In Minnesota, Sam Bradford went down with an injury after 2 games. In Philadelphia, Carson Wentz would be put on IR near the end of the regular season. Yet, here we are, days away from seeing an NFC championship duel between Nick Foles and Case Keenum. Rams fans from afar are probably stunned to see this happening, about as shocked as we all were Sunday night.
This stuff, don't you? You're going to be all right, Keenum. You just keep competing. You just keep working. Somebody's going to take you. Somebody's not. Somebody's going to be sorry. I got a feeling on that. Make a note here. Just be ready. Just be ready. Just be ready, because you will get your chance.